Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Hello, everyone. The athlete we are speaking with today has been competing since 2014. She's done 16 or 17 shows, gonna have to confirm that, but she turned pro at the Amateur Olympia in Colombia in 2019 as the bikini overall winner. She's a mom, a certified fitness nutrition specialist, owner of Fit Choice Foods in Arizona, and she has been coaching at Pro Physiques for over 3 years now and assists Damian Segovia, who is the co-owner with Whitney Jones. Welcome to the show, Renee Harshey. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Like I said, we got so much to get into today, but I got to ask first, what is something you do or a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage?
Honestly, of course, most people, we pray before we go out there, but I try to just dance and have a good time. No matter what is playing, like what kind of music is on, I just kind of tune out and just dance and try to get the girls next to me to join in. But I did that in Colombia before I won my pro card, and I think I was the only one in line dancing. But I didn't even know the song, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. And that's just something that helps me kind of zone out and kind of stay mellow. And, by that point, we should know our posing, we should be prepared and just have fun. So that's something that I try to do every time before I get on stage.
That's awesome. Even though you were the only one, it paid off for you.
Yeah, for sure. And, because I was in another country, everybody else, spoke a different language. So I'm trying to get these girls to join in, and everyone's nervous, but it helps to kind of just get the jitters out. And I mean, there were some girls that would kind of entertain it, and then they kind of turned her the other way. And I'm like, no, let's keep going. But yeah.
That's awesome. I can't even imagine competing, because I know you've done 2 international shows. At both shows, did most people not speak English?
Oh yeah. So I did Romania back in November of 2018, and luckily the judges, most of them spoke English. So there's usually a translator. So the judge will usually speak in English, and there's a translator that'll speak in their language. So they did that in both Romania and Colombia. But also the judges try to speak Spanish. Well, at least in Colombia they did. And it was Tyler Mannion, and I think he probably spoke a little bit better Spanish than I did. But at least I knew the key words. So I was like, okay, I know that means to turn around, or that means walk to the back. But yeah, it is kind of hard on stage. You could actually, the video I was just watching the other day after I won, I hadn't seen it, but you can tell we're all kind of confused, when they're giving us directions to hold hands or raise our hands or take pictures. And I'm just smiling, just standing there, and everyone else is they know what's going on because they speak Spanish. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. So
Aww.
It's kind of funny to watch.
Yeah, I always wondered about that. I'm like, how do you even, because I know there's been girls who come out here and they compete, but they don't speak English. And I'm like, how do they know that stuff? But I imagine they must just study it before they come.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, sometimes they'll have a translator kind of reiterate what they're saying, but it is hard. But I guess if you're kind of experienced, you kind of know, what to expect when you're on stage too. So you kind of just go with the flow.
Yes, for sure. Well, I want to jump into something with you that I know you haven't officially announced, or maybe, you would have before this episode airs, but I'm going to let you announce it, and then I'll segue into the question I have about it.
Yeah, when I spoke with you first, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to announce it before we do this or not, but I haven't. So this is my official announcement. So this year, I keep forgetting that it's already 2020, I am actually switching over to the wellness division. So I will be competing as a pro in the new wellness division.
Yes, that
Yes.
is so exciting. And
Yes.
I know you were like, I don't know if I should come on the show because I want to, you were really sweet to consider like that I interview IFBB bikini pros, but I was like, I definitely
Mhm.
want to have you on. And there's a couple reasons. One, I think you're really awesome. And two, you are
Thank you.
and have been, yeah, you're welcome. You've been working, with a well-known and respected team, so we can learn a lot from you. But also, there are a lot of other girls in bikini who are considering making a switch. Plus, you worked
Mhm.
so hard to earn your pro card, and you are a really fantastic example of patience and persistence and trusting the process. So I'm just excited to get into all of that with you. But let's talk about what inspired you to switch after just recently earning your pro card in bikini.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did have a really long road to get my pro card. By the time I earned my pro card, I had competed in 16 shows. So the next day was the pro show, so I jumped in that, and I don't really consider that my pro debut, but that would have been my 17th show. But it was a long road to get there, and the reason why is because structurally, I am not the typical bikini girl. I'm more dense. I have a lot of muscle. I can say the first couple years, my feedback was always bring down your legs and glutes, bring down your legs and glutes. And, year by year, I was getting better, but I was still one of like the bigger girls in my class. So that kind of like held me back. Well, by the time I prepped for Columbia, which honestly, I decided to do that show 6 weeks out. My coach decided that we would do that show
Wow.
6 weeks out. But I really brought my legs down as much as I could. But we also knew that going to that region, there was going to be more girls that were like similar to my body type. And so that's kind of why we chose that show, because it was like, I would probably size up better to girls down there than I will in the national shows in the US. And obviously it worked out really well. But so that was in February. And then I actually had planned on doing the Pittsburgh Pro, in bikini a few months later. And I had competed for, I did Romania and then I did that show and I was tired. But I was like, no, I'm doing this, but I didn't feel my best. And we decided to kind of hold off and let me focus on coaching, because that's like where my biggest focus is and where my passion is. And, I went to the Pittsburgh Pro just as a coach that year, and I'd been before, but that's when they announced wellness. And I remember sitting there when they were on stage and talking about it, and I was like, oh, yeah, I saw those girls in Columbia, because they had an amateur division for wellness when I got my pro card there, but they weren't giving pro cards for that division at the time. So I had seen those girls, and I stood next to them, and I was looking at them, I'm like, damn, like they're like athletes. Like they have like the most beautiful legs. And I remember just kind of saying like, wow, maybe I could have done this a few years ago before I ran my legs down, and yeah, so when they announced it at the Pittsburgh Pro, that's when my coach was like, you're doing it, you're switching. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I am not that big yet, and I've broken down all my muscles so I could fit in bikini. And he's like, that's your structure though. Like you have wider hips. You've always had bigger glutes, bigger legs. We just have to work now on bringing that back up. And I kind of, you were kind of like doubting it for a little while, because for so long mentally, I'd always told myself, like, I'm a bikini girl, I'm going to be small, and I'm going to do a lot of cardio and all of that just so I could stay small. And I couldn't wrap my mind around growing. But of course, like, because I've been coaching for a while, I've coached other women and like the figure division, and I've taught them how to grow. So I'm like, you know what, screw it, let's do it. I knew where as bad as it sounds, but it's realistic, I knew where my ceiling was in bikini. So this was the first opportunity for me to really excel at a pro level. So I was like, you know what, all right, let's do it. And it was from that moment on, I just kind of started training legs more and just eating more and focusing on gaining more muscle. And now, then I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'll ever be what they are portraying wellness to be. But now that I've been so consistent with it and just followed my coach's plan, I'm starting to see it. And I'm like, okay, like I can see what he was seeing back then. So it's really exciting. And I'm honestly, this is the best I've felt. Because like I said before, I was so muscular that my food could never get really high, and I had to do a lot of cardio to stay small. And it wasn't enjoyable. I love competing and I love the bodybuilding industry, but I never felt great. I never felt like I had a fit. I've been telling people I felt like I was, trying to fit a square into a circle. Like you can make it fit if you shave the corners, but it's never going to fit perfectly. And that was me in bikini. So now I just feel like I kind of have a home, and I'm so thankful that, the NPC and IFBB created this for us in the US so girls like me can fit into it. So I really feel like I'm just growing, not just physically, but as an athlete too. And it's been like so fun. I'm like lifting every day, lifting heavy, no cardio. My food is high. I'm mentally so much more a happy person because I'm not dieting and doing tons of cardio. So it is a better fit for me. So I am excited.
Dang, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing all of that because that
Yeah.
covers a lot of what I wanted to know too. And I'm going to ask you more specifically because you brought up the lifting and the changes in the way
Mm-hmm.
you're approaching it. It sounds like before you really were fighting where your body wanted to naturally go in order to, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, fit into this circle, when now you're getting this opportunity to work with your body and allow it to maybe achieve its best form the way it's meant to and the way it's structured to, which is super cool. And I mean, just from looking at your pictures, it's like, wow, what a difference already. So
Mm-hmm.
what have you changed about your lifting style? Like maybe how's your workout split different, or how your workouts structured differently?
Yeah. So before, when I was doing bikini, of course, there was a focus on glutes. So I was still training glutes like 3 times a week, but I could never really lift heavy. I couldn't do like any kind of like hip thrust heavy or deadlifts. It would make my legs grow, my glutes would get too big, and so I have a narrow upper body, so my proportions were off. So I always had to do like lighter body weight, banded workouts, and yes, they're still fun, but they're not like I grew up like weightlifting. My first weightlifting class was my sophomore year of high school, and then I took it for like junior and senior year. Like I've always been, that's been my thing. So I could never really enjoy my workouts. So now the focus, of course, is growing my legs and glutes since I broke them down so much. But I have more like quad focused exercise. I'm doing more leg extensions, more leg press, hack squats, which I never touched when I was doing bikini. I could never do quads because they would just blow up. So my focus was always glutes and hamstrings. And so now I'm training quads like twice a week pretty much. And then I have a hamstring and glute day. So still legs 3 times a week. And then I have 2 upper body days and 2 rest days. So yeah, I mean, my focus more has been on growing my glutes and my quads, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm enjoying lifting heavy, and some days it's not always heavy. Like you have to sometimes fit in your lighter weight, higher rep, high volume workouts. You can fit, or you can hit all those different muscle fibers. So like I have 2 quad days, but one's going to be more of a higher volume, and then my other quad day is going to be like heavy lifting. And then of course I have my glute hamstring day. So I'll kind of switch it up depending on what else I've done during the week. But yeah, that's kind of how I've been organizing my workouts. And my coach does that for me. So he literally will tell me pretty much every week, like, this is your split. Sometimes he'll write out my exact workouts. So I've been following a plan like this since, he kind of let me do my thing for a few months after we decided to switch to wellness. And then I think I've been following this structured plan the way he lays it out for me since like August. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's a good amount of
Yes.
time so far. So how about your eating then?
Yeah. So I'm a flexible dieter, or I follow macros. I wouldn't say flexible because I actually eat mostly whole foods. So right now, like I mentioned, I'm eating a lot of food. I'm doing no cardio, so it's pretty amazing.
Yes.
My low carb days, I'm eating 245 grams of carbs, 55 grams of fat, and like my high carb days, which is today, is 400 grams of carbs and 50 grams of fat. So like I am not missing out on any meals. I'm definitely not
No
starving.
way.
Yeah. So, and like I mentioned, I prefer to eat whole foods. feel better. I look better. I don't get that like bloated feeling or like water retention from fitting in like more processed or artificial foods. And that's just my preference. Like the women I coach, it kind of depends on the individual, but I promote whole foods. And then there's of course, the anomalies too. They can eat like, Pop-Tarts and cereal and whatever and look the same. And that's fine because it still fits. But for me, I would say probably like 95% of my food is whole foods. Unless it's a high carb day, like sometimes I have to catch up and eat like a Pop-Tart or cereal or something. But other than that, it's like rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, oats for my carbs. So that's pretty much what I do every day.
For sure. Yeah, it's crazy
Mm-hmm.
because when you get your carbs to a certain level, if your fats aren't necessarily going extremely high with it, you kind of have to eat just rice or have to eat just the oats or the potatoes because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you're looking at food that is higher in, fat as well or protein as well. So then it almost requires you to be extra mindful of where you're getting those carbs from.
Yeah, for sure. And I like food. I like volume. So I'm good with it. I'm like, oh, cool. Like I can have 2 cups of rice for each meal right now. Like, so it works
Yes.
for me. I'm, like I said, I'm never going hungry. Well, there are some days if you ever like have a high carb day and then like that day you're like starving, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, what the hell? Like, but that's your
Yes.
metabolism moving and that's good, So that happens all the time. I'm like, why am I starving? It's my high carb day. So, but
Yeah.
it's been really good.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
know, like, I always tell my clients because I work on more of like the mental side with girls. I don't do the fitness coaching anymore or anything like that. But a
Mhm.
lot of girls are like, it's like I can't. I want more and more and more of the carbs in the food, right? But our brain rewards us for eating because it's a life-sustaining behavior. So
Mhm.
there's like that psychological aspect of, hey, the more you're feeding your body, you have to be prepared for that mental shift that's going to come with it. That might make you feel even more
Mhm.
hungry. Um, but some people do struggle to get more food down, and it sounds like for you, you like volume, so it's not been a big deal. But have there been days where you were like maybe in the beginning really getting used to eating more?
Yeah, I've talked to my clients about this because they're like so shocked that my food is so high right now. And I'm like, you know what? I went through a period, probably I would say this is more like August or September, where I let myself be uncomfortable. Like, and I have pictures. I was going to do a post today. I'll do it this week, but I didn't look great. I was a little bit, I guess, I wouldn't want to say chubby, but I was like a little puffy, I guess. I don't know. But I allowed myself to get uncomfortable so my metabolism could catch up. So every day I was making myself eat at least, well, it was 200 grams of carbs and 50 grams of fat. And I remember initially I was like, oh my God, I do not want to eat this. Or like it would be 9 o'clock at night and I still had 50 grams of carbs to catch up. But I made myself do it. And by like week 3, my metabolism was moving and it was like I started to drop weight and I started to look leaner. And that's kind of the process behind reverse dieting is, you have to be consistent with it and make yourself eat even when you don't feel like it. And no, like that's not like stuffing your face. Like we all have a limit. And like if you don't feel good, like you don't feel like eating, don't. But if you know that, you're eating whole foods, you're eating clean, you've been lifting heavy, like of course, if it's going to be 50 grams of carbs is just a little bit over a cup of rice. So it's like, you can get that down, So I kind of just made myself do it for a while. And then before I knew it, I was like, this is nothing. Let's raise my food. So, yeah, it's been really good since then. And like I said, I run my high carb days now. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I'm starving. So, but yeah, I definitely went through an uncomfortable phase but it passed. And the reason why was just being consistent. So like, I know all of us coaches were like, you have to be consistent, but it's true. That was the only thing that worked for me. And that's what I know, like for a lot of girls that I coach, like if they just stay on track with everything, that's when things start moving. It's kind of when you do like when you start doubting things and you're like, oh, I kind of feel fat today, so I'm going to pull my carbs back. And like, then you start restricting and then like now you're hungry. So then you binge and like, that's the cycle that
Mhm.
is so negative and that a lot of girls fall into and they don't see results and then they get discouraged. So I just sat my ass down and I was like, okay, this is what we're doing every single day. And then once it started working, I was like, okay, like I feel better about it and we'll move forward. So yeah, I mean, it's been good since like, I mean, September was probably when I started feeling like metabolism started taking off, and yeah, we're here now.
Wow. Okay. I love all of this because it's giving us a lot of insight. And I'm curious, you said you had moments where you were feeling like I'm getting a little chubby. I'm gonna stick it out because I know that my body needs it. It's gonna pay off in the
Mhm.
long run. What helped you, or what knowledge did you bring to that application of, eating more and trusting that your metabolism will kick up, that helped you to eventually get there? I'm not being clear, I don't think, but like what did you do
I get
to—
what you're saying.
You do? Okay, okay, then I'll let you take it from
Yeah.
there.
Well, I think it has been for me a lot of trial and error. I have had really good reverse diets. I've had really crappy ones. I've had moments where I've gotten into binging cycles post show. And I think because I've been through it all, I know what works and what doesn't. And just because of, my experience with coaching. So I have literally never seen somebody gain a ton of weight by eating whole foods and spacing their meals out every 3 hours, like doing like what we say to do. And I mean, maybe their weight doesn't drop, or maybe it goes up a pound or two, but you're not gaining fat from that. So I know in my head, like mentally, if I stick with whole foods, I do my training, I get my sleep, I do all the things that you need to do in order to make your body function the way it needs to, then it's going to work. So, but I had to go through those times where I remember like I would eat like cookies, and then like I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to be over my fat. So for dinner I'm going to have egg whites, and like I call it bargaining. So like this is what I
Hmm.
tell my clients is like, you're like, well, I'm just going to eat this now and later I'll just have this. And like some of that's okay. Like when you have events, when you have like, a birthday or a wedding or whatever, and you want to celebrate, or, your coach gives you a refeed or cheat meal, that's fine. But to do that daily, like, no, you're not going to see results. Like your body's just like, what the hell are you doing? Like your metabolism doesn't know what to do. And so, I've been through all of that, and I just knew that if I just kind of stuck with it for a while and just committed to eating whole foods, like I said, then it was going to work. So it's just been a lot of trial and error. And I mean, I've been competing since 2014. So I've had a lot of like bad, like I said, bad reverse diets, but I learned from it. And I swear, like with my clients, that's something that I can attest to and just say, you guys, like I have been there. Like this is what works, or, you're doing this cycle that's going to make you like kind of go into a tailspin where you're, you know, um, restricting your calories one day and the next day you're binging, or you're going out to eat and eating whatever when it's not your high carb day or whatever. And they get so frustrated. And I'm like, I've been there. You have to just stick it out for a little bit and it will get better. So that was kind of where I was coming from. I just know from experience. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that I would have been able to do this process like where I am now with growing and eating more had I not been through all of those phases before. So I'm actually really thankful, even though I look back at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what was I thinking? Like, I knew better, whatever, but it really did. It helped me. It helped me with coaching, which I love, and it helped me get to this place now. So I'm thankful for having those like really bad times. But yeah, I mean, if I didn't have those, I wouldn't be here. So.
Exactly. Yeah, we can learn from our past and then let it, fuel our future and making sure that we are actually
Mhm.
doing better. And yeah, it's pretty amazing too what we just learn from those things. And it's great that people who have gone through it can then share their experiences and help girls, like you are helping your clients to actually have more beneficial reverse diets and also preps as well, which I'm excited to talk to you about too, like your coaching style. Um,
Mhm.
I wanted to bring up, like, your body changes, yours specifically, Renee, how you put on a lot of muscle size without gaining much body fat, which you've attributed to the whole foods and the consistency in your training, your sleep, and your nutrition. So what else do you think you do? Like, what other habits do you think you have that have helped you to now be, experiencing these positive results?
Um, wow. So, like you mentioned, whole foods, sleep, all of those things matter. I think heavy lifting because like I said before, I wasn't able to do a lot of that. So, you know, incorporating more of that into my training has really helped me keep my body fat decent. Like, no, I mean, yes, like I don't look, you know, where some people like prefer to do like the whole bulking thing. I can't do that. So I have like mentally, it's just better for me to put on size gradually. So you know, I think that I have really focused on my nutrition, my training, sleep, and just, I mean, it really comes down to consistency. Like, I'm not promoting this, but I don't go out and like eat all the time. So yes, you can on prep or you can in your off season, but like, I know that one, I'm going to save money if I don't go out and eat all the time. But I also just, you know, I sit at home and I cook my meals or whatever. And I make sure that every single day I'm on track. And like, of course, like there's sometimes I go over on my food. It's not like crazy amounts, but I do. But I don't sit there and dwell on it. And like the next day do a ton of cardio to compensate for it. That's like what I was mentioning before is like the negative cycle. So that, you know, is something for me in the past that has been an issue where I would allow myself to eat something. I would feel guilty about it. Then the next day I would do a crap ton of cardio and then I'd be starving and then I would eat again. And it was just like this never ending cycle. So I promised myself I wouldn't do that. And then I really just put my trust in my coach's plan for me. So even though like I've been coaching for over 3 years, I've coached, you know, regional level, national level. I've helped girls get their pro cards. I know these things, but even I need a coach. So I need him to check me every now and then. So I remember, I mean, it'd been a few weeks or so since he had seen me in a suit or whatever. And I just came into the gym one day. I was like, okay, I'm getting my suit. You can look at me, because I needed to be like mentally checked. Because I remember feeling that like, I remember feeling like I know that my food should be raised right now. I'm starting to feel hungry, but I don't want to do it myself because I don't want to get fat or I don't want to gain weight. But I'm like, I need someone else to look at me because we all get, you know, we're like head cases. We get in our heads about it. So I was like, okay, I need you to look at me. And of course, he was like, your body fat's in a good place. Like, I didn't even tell him, like, this is what I'm thinking. I just needed him to check. And he was like, your body fat looks, I mean, it's in a good place. Let's raise your food. And so once I heard someone else say it, I was like, okay, like I can trust this. So, I mean, that has been something, is just checking in. Like, we all need that. Like, nobody does this on their own. And if they do, like, I mean, they're probably, I don't know much, I don't want to say stronger, but like, you need somebody there to really kind of keep you in check and like not make sure you're on the right track and that you're not going off the deep end or like holding yourself back, you know, like I'm sure there are plenty of girls right now trying to do the same thing, but they're not allowing themselves to do it in a healthy manner because they don't know that they can, or they don't trust it. And so they're, you know, holding themselves back. And in the end, that kind of just sets you up for failure, especially if you want to have longevity, if you want to do multiple shows, all of those things. So it's, for me, it's just been making sure that when I am starting to question things, that I kind of voice that, or, you know, I make sure that I am on the right track and just check in with my coach, which I tell all my girls to do all the time. It's like, you have a question, just check in with me, you know, so that's been a huge help for me.
Yeah, accountability and having someone who can like give you that pair of eyes or like maybe that mental confirmation that you need makes a huge difference. Like I think all coaches need coaches, you know, it's like a therapist isn't immune to their own emotions either, you know, so it's similar as an athlete. Like you're not, there's some things like you have your blind sides. I guess that's a good way of putting it. Like, yeah, your blind spots, and you have to have someone who can fill them in for you and see them and help you to really improve and grow. Like the best in the business of any sport, they have coaches. It doesn't matter. Like they're not too good for it. So, I like that you're saying, you know, sometimes you need that mental confirmation. You need that support, and that's what's going to help you to get there.
If you think back about like, if you've ever, any of your preps, like you were probably questioning yourself. Like I remember even like, you know, a few weeks out from going to Columbia, I remember being like, oh, I don't know. Do my glutes look good? Are they, you know, am I lean enough or whatever? And you question yourself. And then like right now, if I were to look at those pictures, I'd be like, what the hell was I thinking? Like I was friggin' lean, my glutes were bomb or like whatever, you know, but like, and that's why you have a coach, because your coach, well, and hopefully a good knowledgeable one, but will tell you like, no, you are, on track, or you need to do this or whatever. But we are constantly questioning ourselves. So it is important, no matter how much experience you have, to at least have somebody that, you can check in with, and accountability. And yeah, I mean, for me, I even though I know things, I still need to be kind of checked and put in my place sometimes. So
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I think that it's awesome that you can say that and express it too. I think girls need to know that it doesn't just stop with knowledge or with experience. It gets better. It gets easier for sure. Like I was posting
Yeah.
about this the other day. Like I was experiencing some self-doubt like 2 weeks ago as I was like getting into
Yeah.
prep, finally, picked out a show date, and I was like, this is the shit I help people with. And I'm still struggling, but it's like it doesn't it wasn't as bad as it used to be, because now I have the knowledge and tools to move through it. And I think that if we are open to learning those things, and we're actually asking our coach questions, or we are pursuing the education and the knowledge and experiences on our own, it's going to benefit us moving forward, but it doesn't make us immune.
For sure. I agree completely. Yes. And the other thing too is, I know, at least for me in the beginning, I would do things that like maybe my coach didn't know, like nothing bad, but like if he told me to do 30 minutes of cardio, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do 40, like, like kind of doing things like that I thought I knew better. And maybe in bikini, because for my physique, I needed to be smaller. So in some cases it worked out, but there were plenty of cases where it didn't. For instance, I remember I did NPC Universe. Gosh, this had to have been, I want to say 2016. And I, against my coach's advice, and I don't think I've ever told him this, so whatever, we're
Uh-oh.
just gonna start spilling secrets. But
It's
I remember I
confessions.
pulled my, yeah, I pulled my fats. I took out all of my fats like the last 2 weeks, and I got so lean. Like, I've never been that lean, and people still. I literally had somebody comment to say that to me today, like, "Hey, remember you? How what's your weight at when
Do
you
you
did that?" And
remember
no,
what?
I mean,
I'm sorry, you broke up a little
I
bit.
think I got in 10th place at that show. I was in second class.
Oh, hold on. I lost you for a little bit.
Oh, I remember, like, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I heard you. So I don't know, but I'll just kind of go back. Yeah. So when I was in Universe, I pulled all my fats against my coach's advice. I thought it was going to make me leaner, which it did. But I still have people comment to me today saying, like, do you remember when you did Universe? Like, you were so lean for that show. And it didn't work out in my favor. I mean, I think I was second call outs. I think I got 10th place that show. And I remember, now I look at those pictures and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, I had no glutes. My arms were stringy. Like, I didn't look good. And so my point in saying that, though, is, like, you have to be honest with your coach. Like, especially, like, I was just having this conversation with one of my clients today. If I don't know what you're doing, I can't adjust properly. So, like, that has been part of my commitment moving forward as well, is like, I mean, I'm following the plan to a T, but if anything does come up, if it's like, oh, I was so exhausted, I don't know, I'm not doing cardio right now, but if I was like, I didn't finish my, hip thrust or whatever, I'll tell him. So he knows,
Mhm.
so he knows what to change. But I think, like, a lot of us in the beginning, at least, would do that because we don't fully trust, or we think we know, or we want to look a certain way. And really, when it comes down to it, if you don't give your coach all, like, of the information of anything that you've changed or what you've been doing, they can't adjust properly. So that has been, like, a big thing too, is just making sure that I'm communicating things that I'm doing and not trying to hide or just trying to think I know better. Like, just doing little things here and there that I think is going to help. They're giving me an advantage, because at the end of the day, if you trust your coach, you have a good coach, they're going to know what's best for you. So there, yeah.
Exactly. Yes,
So
I could
there,
not agree more.
I confessed one of my secrets my coach has never known. So 4 years later, he's like, what?
That explains everything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. I've always been really honest with my coach in every single check-in about even the most minute details, because I always ask myself, like, would I want to know or would I need to know? And I think that if we're not honest, like you said, it's just going to hold us back in the long run. So if we can say, like, I'll even tell my coach, like, I went on a hike on my rest day and it was because I hadn't been on a hike in a long time. I wanted to, blah, blah, blah. Or I did this cardio instead of that cardio because this was hurting, or this movement.
Yeah.
It's like, I think if our coaches know exactly what's going on, they can make changes. And this is a team effort. And I know you're going to attest to this being a coach yourself. It's like we win together and we learn together. So
Yes.
it's like you can't blame your coach for your lessons or your losses, right? But you also can't take all the credit then when you win. It's got to be a team effort, and it can't be unless everyone knows all the details, especially if it's an actual customized approach, if it's actually someone who's paying attention to detail and knows what they're talking about, and actually someone who, like you said before, like cares about your health.
Exactly. Yes. I was actually having that conversation with a client today because, I thought her reverse diet wasn't working. And I was like, we were considering pulling her from her next show, which was in 10 weeks. And, as we were discussing it, she had kind of mentioned like, well, and this past week I didn't do all of my cardio, only did what I could. And I'm like, see, those are the things I need to know, because had I known that you weren't doing all your cardio, yet your weight was maintaining as I was increasing your food, that's a successful reverse diet. Like, you're lowering your cardio. I would have told you, okay, so instead of doing 5 days a week, you've been doing 3, but your weight isn't going up and your food is getting higher. So why not? Like, let's do the show in 10 weeks and let's just increase your cardio, and now we're on track. But I didn't know any of that. So had I not called her today and spoke with her, I would have probably told her, let's not do the show in 10 weeks. We're going to need more time. But then, like, again, it was just that communication, that small piece of information. I'm like, oh, well, I know how to adjust that. And now things are going to change a bit. So to your point, yes, it's very important, and it's a team effort.
Yeah, it wasn't just like, oh, my body's just not responding at all. It's no, my body is responding, but it's because I'm doing something different, or it's responding to what I'm actually doing. So, yeah, I think that's great, real life example. And we've talked to some different girls from Pro Physiques actually on this podcast. So you coach with Pro Physiques. So what approach do you think you guys take, or you take, that sets you guys apart from other teams or coaches?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of fun. No, I honestly, it's funny you say that, because I was telling somebody this the other day. Like, I'm not saying that, there's a lot of bad coaching out there. There's plenty of good, knowledgeable coaches who have the similar approach that we do. However, at the same time, there are a lot of coaches and teams out there that, they just want to do whatever they need to do to get you on stage. And yeah, when you're a novice competitor, that's what you want to. You're like, I just want to get on stage and I want to look my best. You don't really have an understanding of, how things can affect your metabolism or your hormones or whatever. So I actually jokingly was telling somebody this the other day, that I feel like recently, in the past few years, actually, like, we're kind of like the cleanup crew. Like, we get so many girls that come to us and they say, they're just like, my body's not responding anymore. My hormones are shot, or, my metabolism is so slow. And I have actually found a lot of like passion in this is helping turn that around. Like, help, like you hear the term all the time, metabolic damage, when really it's not damage. It is reversible, but it just takes some time. But we have really, like, that's been our approach with people who come to us and say, like, I did a few shows and now my body's not responding. What can I do? We've really helped a lot of women get back on stage. I mean, and I'm talking like from, a regional level, national level, up to pro level. Like, there's a lot of, pros that we've helped to get back on stage. But I also think that what sets us apart is there are, like I said, that some coaches out there that they want to get you on stage. They want to make a name for themselves, and you might look great for your first show, maybe your second show, whatever. But I will literally, if a girl comes to me and she says, right now, and they don't know better. They're like, I'm eating 1,000 calories. I'm doing an hour of cardio a day. And there's a show that I want to do that's in 12 weeks. I'll be like, no, like, you need more time, because where do you go from there? Like, if you're eating 1,000 calories and you have 10, 12 weeks to get ready for a show, you have to drop your calories even lower, make your cardio higher. And this isn't for everybody. Some people, we have reverse diet into a show, but generally you have to do that, go through that process to make your body change. That is that's when you start having the hormonal issues, the metabolic issues. And that's not something we want to be associated with. So like for me, I always tell girls in the beginning, I will tell you if you're not going to be ready for a show. Like I will not put your health at risk. I won't like, I want you to enjoy this process. I want you to come back and do another show. So don't be offended if I say, I know you have your eye on that show, but you're going to have to wait another couple months so we can reverse diet a bit. And, you know, we'll pick another show. And I promise it's going to be a better experience for you. And you're not just going to do that show. You're going to be able to do shows after that because your body's going to be responding. You're going to be healthy. You know, the next prep you have, your hormones are going to be in a good place. So your body will be responding then. So I think that's just another approach that as comprehensive like group we all take. Like I don't know any coach on our staff that would tell somebody eating 1,000 calories, yeah, you can do this show, like, or, you know, like we really take that and we don't want that reputation of putting girls on stage that, and, you know, a lot of times too, there's been coaches out there that don't reverse diet. So that's part of our process is like when somebody contacts us and they say, oh, you know, I want to do a show in X amount of weeks, or I'm considering competing, we say, okay, this is the process. You know, we take some time to reverse diet, depending on where your physique is at, where your calories are at, how your metabolism is responding, where your hormones are at. And then, you know, we'll put you through a prep, but you have to reverse diet after. Like, we don't let clients, like, of course, there's some people that are just like, I'm good after a show, you know, and those are the clients that like usually come back to us a year later and they're, you know, they've gained 20 or 30 pounds and they're like, I need help again. But for the most part, we have everybody on board reverse dieting because it is that important. It's not just like about getting your calories higher or your cardio lower. It's really following a plan so you feel good and like you know, you don't get into that headspace where you're like, oh, I'm gaining weight. I don't know what to do. I'm going to add more cardio. I'm going to do, you know, it's really to keep them on track. And so they don't get into that negative cycle that we were talking about before. So yeah, I honestly think it's just that we really put a focus on health and I don't take it lightly, and I will shut somebody down. I won't put them in a show if it's going to risk their health. So
For
yeah.
sure. That's good to hear. So because this can be defined by a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So how do you define an unhealthy extreme? And then how do you help someone recover from that type of thing?
Yeah. I think we have to consider one, what their goal is. So, you know, if somebody comes to us and says, I eventually want to get on stage, you know, and I want to kind of do whatever I need to get my physique ready to be competitive. If at that point they're doing anything extreme, for me, what I think is extreme, if you're not close to a show and you're doing an hour plus of cardio, that's too much. It's not necessary. And that's any kind of cardio, even if it's steady state. I don't think if you're doing that every day, like not necessary. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm saying that it is necessary when you get close to a show, but we're all different. Like, you know, when you're 2 or 3 weeks out and you have to do 25 minutes of fasted cardio, and then maybe in the afternoon you have to do another 25, like that's not bad. But when you're doing it just because you're trying to maintain like, that to me is not necessary. Minimal like calories are usually like somebody who is not, again, close to a show, like there's no reason why anybody's calories should be under 1,200. There's none. I mean, if you are an athlete, if you are training every single day, if you're active, you need more calories. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times people come to us and they want to lose weight, and like I have them, you know, they log their food or they'll write it down so I can see it. And I'm like, yo, you're eating like 800 calories. Do you realize that? And a lot of times it's just stunting their metabolism. They're like, they're like, no, I'm not really hungry. I'm like, yeah, because your metabolism's not working. So in those cases, what we do is it depends on the person, what their goal is, their activity level, all of that. But I'll either raise their calories to a maintenance level, like, and it just, again, depends on like their size and stature and all that, but like 1,800 calories. Or if they're, you know, maybe a little bit overweight and they're eating 1,000 calories, I just kind of increase a little bit over time. And I give them small goals to focus on at first. It's like, because if you throw everything at them, you're like, you have to eat X amount of carbs and you have to eat your protein and you have to do like all that, it becomes overwhelming for them and they don't want to do it. So usually what I'll do is I'm like, okay, for this first week, we're gonna hit your protein goal. Like, that's important. And I want you eating every 3 hours. And then once they get that underway, it's easier to add those other things in. Okay, this week, now that you have your protein down, now that you're eating every 3 hours, you're getting your water in, now we're going to add your carbs in. I mean, of course, during this time, they're still eating carbs, but I'm not increasing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have to also, it's case by case. I don't have like a set plan for everybody. If I feel somebody out and I can tell they're a little bit apprehensive about reverse dieting or they don't believe it's going to work, it is a slow, gradual process. But I I'm very firm and like, I won't go lower. I won't drop their calories just so they can lose weight. So sometimes it's kind of feeling them out and being like, okay, so this week we're going to increase your calories, but we can keep your cardio the same. And then, the next week they check in, okay, so this week we're going to increase your calories, or vice versa. Like I'll kind of flip it. So like each week we're making adjustments, and they might be small ones, but like over the course of 2 months, now they're doing half as much cardio as they were, and their calories have almost doubled, but they didn't realize it because we were doing small gradual changes, So
Yeah.
like I said, though, it just kind of depends on the person. Like this like process in this industry, there's so much more that comes down to
Mm-hmm.
just like their mental, like where they are at mentally. And I'm actually blessed with, after college, I did social work for 4 years.
That's
And so,
awesome.
yeah, I worked in the mental health field for a long time. So I can recognize some of these things. And so like I can I have a lot of more empathy and like understanding of things. Like I'm not going to push somebody past their comfort zone. And I want to hear them out, and I want to hear like what they're willing to do or what makes them uncomfortable. Like, of course, they're going to have to understand where I'm coming from, but you have to listen to your client. You have to understand like what their fears are, or like what's going to freak them out. And you don't want to send them running to another coach who's just going to do it, got them to this place. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of just take it step by step. It's baby steps. It's listening. It's checking in on them. It's letting them, freak out and rant if they need to. And then you're like, bring them back down to earth and say, okay, that's okay. This week we're going to do this instead. Everybody messes up. It's not like I will never like freak out on somebody because they, went over their calories or they didn't do what they were supposed to. Like that's part of this process. Like nobody's perfect, and like we all mess up, and it's kind of like, okay, well, this is why this happened. Or I always kind of explore like, is this something emotional? Like, are you having a hard time sticking to your calories because you're stressed or whatever? So let's focus on that, because if that's the underlying issue, we can resolve some of this. Can we time manage better or whatever? And then things start to fall into place. But to kind of just expect somebody to do something when they've been doing it one way for so long, and just to throw a new program at them and then kind of get mad at them when they're not perfect, like that doesn't work. So for me, it's just a lot of communication and just learning what works for my clients. And then just kind of, we don't do cookie cutter plans. It's like figuring out what works for each person. So I have clients that are on high fat, low carb diets. I have clients that are on freaking really high carb diets and high fats, or, some people follow macros, some people like a meal plan. It's really, you have to hear them out and feel like what works for them. And then just weekly check-ins with them, making sure that like they're still progressing and they're still thriving and they're still liking their program,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what has worked for me. And I have kind of a love for reverse dieting. So probably because I've had really horrible ones that I've learned from. So I just take that approach differently based on the individual. So yeah.
Definitely, as it should be.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's amazing too that you went into social work. Did you study that? Like, what was that experience for you?
So this is such a funny like story how it came about. I won't
Uh-huh.
go like way into detail, but I changed my major 4 times in college. Like I just couldn't commit, didn't know what I wanted to do. When I went to ASU, Arizona State, and
Uh-huh.
my first major was aeronautical technology.
Oh
So that's
my
like
God.
so opposite of anything that I've been doing. I got my pilot's license when I was 17,
Nice.
and I thought that I wanted to be a commercial air pilot. Long story short, changed my major a bunch of times. And I went to college for 6 years because I couldn't decide. But I would say my 4th year, my counselor was like, listen, like, you've been at this for a while. And she was like, I looked at your credits and everything. And if you just like buckle down for the next year, you can have a degree in sociology and anthropology. And I was like, and then I'm out of this place. Like, okay. So that's what I did. I graduated with my degree in sociology and anthropology. My last year at ASU, I had to do an internship, and I worked for a nonprofit medical center. And I kind of did some, I mean, we weren't counselors then, but like people would come in and talk to you about like some of their issues. We would help them find resources and all that. And that kind of just led into the work that I did after college, which was I worked for another nonprofit agency. But we were contracted with, well, it's DCS, but it's basically CPS, Child Protective Services. So I did that for 4 years, and it was, as draining as it was, and it is hard work, it was really rewarding. I mean, I can remember more of the good memories of like helping families, like, help parents get sober, help reunify families. Like a lot of the programs I did, like once a child was removed from the home, we helped the parents, go to their parenting classes, become sober, or whatever they needed to do so the state would give their children back to them. And then the other program I did was substance exposed newborns. And that, yes, it is tough, but I got to see like people do these like crazy, amazing transformations. Like when you meet them, they just had this child. They're usually not at that point sober. They're still abusing drugs. And you walk this path with them where they're learning sobriety and they're learning so much about parenting. And it's kind of, when it really works, it's beautiful, because I'm like, wow, like that person just changed before my eyes within 6 months. And yeah, as I say about addiction, that's something that you live with forever. So like there's been times where someone would relapse or whatever, and we would help them get back on track. But anyways, I did that for a while, and the agency that I worked for, it was a high turnover. So we kind of joked around that I was there for a long time. But I did that, for 4 years. And then I kind of knew when my time was up. You get to a point where you're not as like you're kind of desensitized to stuff, and just like, you get tired of the kind of like the sad stories and just like a lot of things. And at the time I had just had my daughter, so I wanted to spend more time with her. And so, I kind of said my piece with it and just kind of moved on. And that's when we opened Fit Choice Foods. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love hearing those stories, because I'm pursuing my clinical mental health counseling master's right now.
Awesome.
So I can go on and get licensure and all that. But I'm super passionate about the eating disorder field specifically. And I do a lot of work with girls right now who are competitors in a lot of the post show, but also prep as well. That cycle you talked about is real. And it's happening all the time. And I think that the fitness industry is actually like ridden with bulimia nervosa, and it's unfortunate, but it's something people like us can get ahead of and start changing, and we can encourage other coaches and teams and girls to really see like a better approach. And I just love that earlier you mentioned
Absolutely.
something that sets you apart is empathy. And I can hear just from your experiences working with those families, working with those kids, witnessing these transformations, empathy is something that you have to have in that. And I shouldn't say have to have, it's something you develop in those types of moments. And then you can also have that empathy because you've had your own negative experiences too. So I love to hear that. I think that's a really interesting and cool part of your story.
Yeah, thank you. It has shaped me. Like there's so many times where I'm like, I feel like I'm talking to, one of my competitors, and I'm like, wait, like I just pulled something out from when I used to do social work. Like it does kind of all come together sometimes. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember like this topic or like this resource that I used one time or whatever. But it really has shaped me as just like a coach, as a woman, as a competitor myself. So it's part of my journey. And I again, like that's something that I'm so thankful for. But yeah, you're right. With our industry, it is very, very common with the eating disorders. And like, that's where people ask me all the time, like, if I want, to compete, where do I start? I'm like, research, like start looking around at teams and coaches and like what they are known for, what their practices are, what their methods are. because people don't know that you don't have to do things a certain way. So
Right.
like I mentioned before, we just have a much more balanced, healthy approach with our clients. But there are, a lot of like the old school bodybuilding coaches, which is not wrong. It's just what they grew up doing. But they, prep a lot of clients on really low calories, zero carbs, 2 hours of cardio a day. And it's just accepted because people think that's bodybuilding. And it's not. I mean, it's evolved. So like, yes, you can get to that point where, you can have a competitive look and do all of that, but it's not necessary. And yes, it might take a little bit more time to reverse diet or to prep or whatever, doing things this way, but you have more longevity this way. So if you
Exactly.
really love the sport, if you really love and you want to do it, you can't do those like old school methods where you're just basically starving yourself and you're grinding so hard every day where you get burnt out. So
Yeah.
that's like something, and I'm so glad you have this platform, because I think a lot of us talk about this on here. Is just like, you don't have to do what you think you do to have to get ready for the stage. And if anybody's telling you should, like, run the other way, because there are plenty of teams and coaches out there now that have similar approaches to ours, or we have to
Hmm.
theirs, or whoever started, I don't know. But like, we're starting to learn, like, you don't have to do all that. And I mean, there are so many young girls like that wanting to like take this journey and like start competing, and it makes me sad sometimes. Like when I receive their plans, and I'm like, "Yo, you were eating like tilapia and asparagus for 6 weeks straight, like, and that's it."
I
Like that's,
know.
it blows my mind. And so, but at the same time, when I get those clients and I can teach them the other way, they are so excited and just like, I have never seen my body do this before, or I've never eaten this amount of food, and like that to me is so much, it's so rewarding that like I love those kind of stories so much, because I feel like I'm actually making an impact. So
Yes.
yes.
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love hearing this kind of stuff because it's what we need more of. And I
Mhm.
think like, what you said that really stood out, and then I think it's like so unfortunate yet so important to harp on, is that so many people do not know what right from wrong in the approach, because how, like, if they're not in the industry, if they haven't studied nutrition or training, or maybe they haven't been exposed to other options, they're not going to know. So we have these situations where girls get like their very first coach, and it's someone who's putting them through like a tilapia and asparagus every day for 6 weeks type of approach, and then they think, well, that's how it's supposed to be, and then they go and beat themselves up when they get into a restrictive mindset, when they get into fixation, when they get
Mhm.
into binging, because they think like, oh, I did something wrong. Well, not necessarily. We just need to change your approach so that
Mhm.
you don't experience those things. So I think, yes, having a platform like this, but also social media and research itself has expanded so much. So, a golden era of bodybuilding, that
Yes.
because people love it, people wanted to learn more, that now we've been blessed with this opportunity to have different approaches as well. And it's crazy because some girls will look at one coach and be like, ah, that experience was horrible. And another girl will be like, I needed exactly that, and people are
Yes.
just different.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yes. And I think, a lot of the newbie competitors, they'll of course look at social media and be like, wow, like that coach, his clients look amazing. They look great. And they think that's what they need. Um, but they don't ask the questions that I was mentioning before. And so like, they just see what they see on social media and think that's the way it's supposed to be. So, we get all these girls, but I always tell people too, I'm like, look at okay, so just, I don't know, coach A or whatever, like, sure, maybe he has 12 girls on the national stage and he got 6 pro cards at that show. Where are his pros now? So like, if that coach like turned all these girls pro, but they don't have competing pros, and like these pros are long gone, or like they're not competing anymore because they're having health issues, like that's something to be said. So I don't think people do enough research, because it's like they think it's just hiring a trainer. Well, you should trust your trainer, but there are people out there that aren't, and they don't believe in those approaches either. And this is the way it is, and you take this and you do this much and whatever.
Exactly.
And they just accept it because they don't know any better. So I do tell a lot of girls, I'm like, well, obviously when I'm talking to people about competing, I'm hoping that they're going to train with me. But, and just in general, that's what I tell people. I'm like, yeah, you need to like ask questions, what your methods are, what your expectations are. How many girls, if their goal is to like compete on a national stage or turn pro, how many girls do you bring to national shows? How many pros do you have? How many active pros do you have? Those are the questions that we need to be asking, because that sets apart a lot of coaches from others. So not that like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with coaches that have healthy, balanced approaches that might not coach pros. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if your goal is to get there, look at the coaches that are what they're doing and that are successful and why they're successful. So there are a lot of coaches out there, and not just coaches that are training competitors, but just like health, nutrition coaches, people out there that now have that knowledge. So just make people more aware of it. So our industry gets rid of this like stigma that we're all starving. And like, we all joke about like how, our family asks us at Christmas, like, oh, are you going to eat a salad for dinner? And you're like, no, like, like I can actually eat, but everyone thinks that we don't eat, that we eat salad and chicken all day, and that we just like work out all the time. And I'm like, my workouts are like 30, 45 minutes. Like I'm not in the gym for hours. Like, they just have this idea of what our industry is, and it's not anymore. We've evolved, we've changed. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I think we do a great job as far as like, in our federation, like the NPC, IFEB, kind of promoting which teams, coaches, competitors do well and are good representations of the sport. So they do a really good job of promoting that, because we want people to compete and to continue this journey. And like, we don't want people like having issues. So the people at the top right now, they're doing really well. They have a lot of balanced approaches. Like and I'm just saying this, and I'm not like bragging, but we have 2 of the reigning Olympia champs on our team. And I can tell you right now, Sydney Gillen and Whitney Jones, none of them do anything extreme. And that's year round. Like they don't have to do extreme to get to where they are, because they've been doing a balanced approach for years. So like having them as like at the top, and they can be like great role models for this industry, like it's huge. Like that's what people need to be looking at.
Yeah.
So sorry, I kind of went off on a little rant there, but I was like, for an example, like I know these 2 personally, I know their programs, and they're not doing half the crap that there's these coaches out there having girls do. So
No, I appreciate the rants. I like them. I think that they give us a lot of insight. No, that's one of my favorite parts about running a podcast. I like to hear people
yeah.
talk. So, I want to actually talk to you about your journey to your pro card, and I want to get into your meal prep company. Like I have so much I want to get into with you, and I feel like I could talk to
Okay,
you
I'll
all
stop
day.
ranting then.
No, I like the rants, because that's like, then I think of more stuff I want to say or talk to you about. Like just the whole coaching thing in general is something where it's like, okay, just like being mindful and doing your research and understanding that if a process isn't working for
Mhm.
you, it's just not, it's okay to ask questions and say no. And I think something that I thought of while you were saying that too is a lot of coaches are really fantastic salespeople now, and they're
Mhm.
marketers, and they know their audience. And so I think when we get on the phone with potential coaches, we have to remember that they are trying to sell us into their program, because they want to work with us. They want us to follow their methods or whatever. But we also need to remember we're hiring them. We need to trust them. We need to know and be okay and comfortable. If we can't even ask a question without getting an answer, it's probably right there your sign that it may not be the best choice
Mhm.
anyway.
Right.
So,
I mean, we have a really kind of cool or extensive like consultation process with our client.
mhm.
So I've heard though that other girls have told me, like, I asked my coach this and they were like, just do it because I said so. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. Like, yes, there's time and place to be like, listen, I've already explained this to you. This is why you need to be doing this or whatever. But, I think that it should never be shunned or like a bad thing if you have questions, like especially when you're just researching and like asking. So like when we have clients contact us to find out more about our team, we have one person in particular that kind of takes as far as like online training, kind of takes the consult and like talks to them and answers any questions that they have. But if they want to speak specifically to their coach, one of us, before they sign up, they'll let us know like, hey, this client wants to sign up with you. They have some questions. It's like, okay, cool. I'll give her a phone call, whatever. We get all that out of the way, because it's like, it is really hard when somebody starts something and they have these expectations, or they didn't know, or they have like questions, and then that kind of hinders them from starting their process already. So, yeah, I don't know where you were going to ask me a question, then I just started talking, but
No,
I mean,
no, it's
the
all
consultation
good.
process is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to hear your perspective actually on that as a coach, because it's like, I think coaches actually would appreciate more if you are so invested in the process that you want to know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
tell me what's up, coach. Tell me what we're going to do, because you're invested. You're an athlete. So let's look at your journey to earning your pro card. You worked at this for 5 years, and I want to connect this to coaching as well, because I think there's a lesson here in the persistence and the process. And it's easy today to forget the drive and dedication that still comes and is required for many people to earn, the prestigious level of pro status. So what was your journey like to earning your pro card, considering you've done, 17 shows if you count the day after the pro show as well? So
Yeah.
what was that like?
So I joined Pro Physiques in 2015. At that time, I had done one national show kind of on my own, basically. And I kind of just wanted to do like the bucket list. Like, I just want to get on stage and say I did a national show. Fingers crossed that works out, and I did okay. I was in like second call. That was my very first national show. But then I realized like I really wanted to pursue this. So I contacted Pro Physiques, and from that point on, we were like, okay, your goal is to get top 5 at a national show. So I joined them in November of 2015. And then I did that following year, I did like a warm-up show. I did one of the Spectrum Fitness shows in June. And then I did junior nationals. I did Universe. I did USAs. And then I did nationals after that. And I mean, my very first national show with Pro Physiques, I was in the top 5. So I was like, cool, I made my goal, And then it was crazy because, I love that show. Junior nationals will always be my favorite, like U.S. national show. I don't know, it's fun, but it's that one is close to my heart because that was my very first national show on my own, and that was my first show getting top 5. But I kind of like started dropping and placing. So I did like 8th at Universe. And then I think like USA's, I might've been in like 3rd or 4th call out, Miami National, same thing. And I'm like, what? Like, it was discouraging, but I took some time off. I went back, I did junior nationals again. I got 5th. I was in the top 5. And then I was like 6th at USA's and 6th at North American. So I was like kind of up there. But my feedback continued to be bring down her legs and glutes, and at one point, we talked to one of the judges, and that judge was like, hey, I had to ask another judge what their feedback was because I don't know what to tell you anymore. They're like, you look great, but it's just not fitting, So at that time is when I kind of took some time off and I really focused on coaching. So I've been coaching with Pro Physiques for over 3 years now. But I really started focusing on it a couple years ago. And during that time, I hadn't even earned my pro card, but I turned like girls pro. Like, my first girl that got her pro card under me as her coach was actually one of my really good friends. Her name's Brandy, but she was my first pro card. Actually, Brandy and I used to be on, before we came to Pro Physiques together, the same, like we were on another team and we came over to Pro Physiques together. And then I ended up coaching her. She was the first person to pose me. Like, it's kind of crazy, but a few years go by and I helped her earn her pro card. And then a few years after, a few shows after that, I helped more girls get their pro card. And I kind of had mentioned this to you before, but I work very closely with Damian Segovia, you know, one of the co-owners of Pro Physiques. And so I help him with a lot of his pro athletes and, you know, helping girls earn their pro cards. So I've helped, by the time I was deciding to get back on stage and try to get my pro card again, I had helped like dozens of girls get their pro cards. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, well now it's my turn. But, but all of that, like that experience really helped me because I went to these shows and now I'm like, I'm seeing what the judges are seeing, where before, yeah, I looked good. I looked, you know, was competitive, but I could see what they were talking about as far as like I needed to be smaller or I needed more shape or whatever it was, because I was going to all these shows and it helped my posing. Like, you know, I'm also, because I coach bikini, a posing coach. So like I was going to these shows and I'm seeing all these girls pose and it was just like ingrained in my brain. So like now just being a part of it and just having that experience, it helped me even more so as a coach, even though I hadn't turned pro yet. So I took a year and a half off from competing just so I could focus on coaching. And then, you know, the Romania Muscle Fest came out and my coach Damien was already going because it's also a pro show. So he had some pro athletes in it and he was like, hey, I think you should do it. And I'm like, really? It was at that point, it was like 8 weeks away. And I was like, okay, so let's buckle down and do it. And, you know, I was still in the top 5 at that show. But at that show, because it's an international show, you had to win the overall to earn your pro card. So I didn't size up well to the girls over there. Like over there, the girls are like beautiful, but they're more like long and lean and have like more of like a model-esque look, where I'm just like this like short little muscular girl. So like I didn't fit over there. And so, I mean, it was good. It got me back, you know, it got me back competing and then it was that, so that was November, and then, you know, Christmas passed, and I remember it was like literally like January 1st, and Damien was like, hey, there's a show in Colombia, and it's in 6 weeks, and I think you should do it. And I'm like, okay, can I get like a full like prep where like you're not throwing it at me a few weeks out, but like I had maintained so well since my last show that I was like, you know what, I think I can. Like I can do this. So I literally got ready for Colombia in 6 weeks, and yeah, I mean, we went down there. He was coaching another pro bikini athlete at the time. So it was just like the 3 of us. And, you know, at that show, you had to win. It's top 3 in overall. So, in international shows, they do it a little differently. So in the US, we have 8 height classes. So there there's 4. So there's still a lot of girls, but they put it into 4 classes. So I had, 30 girls in my class, and I was class A. In the US, I used to be in class C. So if you could tell, like that's like a pretty big, like, you know, anybody from like 4'11" up to like probably like 5'2" or 5'3" were in my class. But yeah, so you know, we went down there. It was like a Wednesday. We got there Thursday. I competed on Saturday, and it was a 1-day show. I won my class, and then in the overall, because there was 4 classes, there were 4 of us, and then I ended up winning the overall. And I can promise that I would have never won that overall if I didn't have all that experience from going to those shows, watching all the posing, being, kind of like the assistant coach with other pro shows or national shows or whatever. It really helped me because I knew kind of like what it was going to be like, and like, it helped me a lot as far as like my posing and stage presence and the details. And like, that's something that I always harp on is details. Like details matter so much. Like, oh my gosh, it drives me insane sometimes because girls are like, oh my gosh, like that girl had like the most amazing physique. Why didn't she win? Or that girl doesn't even have a good physique. Why did she win? And it's like, because the details matter. Her hair came together, her makeup came together, her tan was perfect, her suit complimented her, like all of those things. So like going into that show, I knew that everything had to be on point. But again, like I just sized up really well to those girls. So yeah, I mean, and like they say, it is true. Like all the stars have to align. I mean, when it's your day, when it's your time, it's your time. Like I would not take back winning the overall at the Amateur Olympia last year just so I could get my pro card 2 years earlier. Like I wouldn't. I mean, it was perfect the way it happened, and just like and the girls that I met while I was there, and then being able to jump into the pro show the next day, like it was honestly such a blessing, and it helped me be obviously where I am now with coaching. Like I had to take that time and really focus on that in order to get that experience and knowledge, and then it helped me on stage, and it's helping me in the process now with my switching, my switching to wellness. So yeah, it was a very long journey, but it couldn't work out better. Like it was meant to be this way. So it's been awesome.
Yes. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that whole journey you just took us through is really powerful because I mean, there was a lot of powerful voice, but I want to say that you didn't earn first place at a show before going and winning an overall at a show where there's
Yes.
less height classes, so you're going up against girls who are different size than you, and you had to not only win your own class, but then you had to go on and take top 3 in overall. So for someone who hadn't done that, you had some high placings in there for sure that to be
Mhm.
really proud of. But some girls think I've never won first place, or oh, I am doing a warm-up show and then I'm gonna go and compete in nationals. What if I don't do well in the warm-up show? It's like you can still do it.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, and that's something too that I think a lot of girls and like coaches and teams don't understand is your national show. Like when you're going to get your pro card, there is a strategy. It is not just like let's do all the national shows and see if one pans out. Like you kind of have to figure out like, okay, so this judge that judges this show likes this look, and yes, there is a standard for bikini. There's a standard for figure. There is a standard for all divisions, but they're based on the region, based on like are you competing in the open? Are you competing in masters or whatever? There is a look for each one. And, it has to be strategic when you're picking your national show. And that's another thing that I do think that our team does differently, because I can't tell you how many times girls come to us and they're like, well, I did this show and this show and this show. And you're like, why? Like, you didn't have to do all that. You should have just focused on this one or whatever the case is. But that is something that I have learned specifically from Damien. He's really smart about like picking national shows and pro shows for clients. It's not like you do all of them and hope that you're going to win or hope that you're in the top 5 or hope that you get a pro card. Like there has to be a reason, rhyme and reason for it. So like I said, for me, it was that and if you look at my lineup in the top 5 when I won my class in Columbia, we all sized up really well. And then if you go to some of my national shows, like I'm definitely one of the more muscular, bigger girls on stage. So like I usually, like when I won my pro card, I was 114 pounds and I'm 5'2". So like I'm not a tall person at all. But in the US in class C, those girls are like 105, 108 soaking wet. So like
Yeah.
I just always looked bigger. And so going down there where the girls are just a little bit more, dense in their legs and glutes, all of that, it worked. It just worked out really well. And like, yeah, I had never, not even a regional show, won first place at any of my shows. Like my
Wow.
first time ever getting first place was the day I won my pro card. And I mean, but I did, and I still believe this, but I like manifested the crap out of that. Like I remember flying down to Columbia and I told myself, and I think I did a post about this or it's in my story, saved on my page somewhere, but I said, class winner, overall winner, ISBB pro. And I wrote that down in my journal before going down there. And I even have it saved in one of my stories where the day of my show in Columbia, I text my daughter and I said something like, hey, babe, mommy's going to win her show for you today. And I saved that. And like, I just believed it. I told myself there was no other option. That's it. And you have to really believe it. Cause I think we all go into shows being like, I'm going to win. I'm going to do this. But
Mm-hmm.
in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I really hope it happens. I didn't even give myself that doubt. Like I wouldn't even speak on it when somebody's like, how do you think you're going to do it? I'm like, well, duh. Like and it wasn't to be cocky, but it was because I needed to be in that mindset where there was no other option. But I mean, I still to this day think that I manifested that because I was like, I mean, I had never won like that before. And like to do it in that way, I was like, yes, like this was my time. All the stars aligned. This is perfect. So I
Mm-hmm.
loved that, even though I had to wait longer than some girls do, I wouldn't take it back. It was perfect. I love it. So
Yeah. That's amazing. It sounds perfect, and I love how you said that. It's like manifesting is not just about writing it down and hoping it comes true, putting it under your pillow. It's not about that. It's like you actually genuinely have to believe it. So yes, writing it down every day, visualizing it every day, that's going to help that belief get stronger and stronger. But there are sometimes those moments in life where you're just like, I just know. And there's sometimes where you don't know it and you get
Mhm.
surprised. But there are times like what you say, like you just knew and you stuck with that. And I think
Mhm.
when you said, people would ask me and I would say, well, of course, this is the only option. When we take such a strong stance for ourselves like that and we have that mindset, we're going to carry that with us into our workouts and into our meals and into everything we do where we're going to bring the winner's mentality.
Well, for sure. And like I had told myself too, because I had literally done every single US national show many times over. I had been, on the other side of the world when I did Romania. And I told myself, I was like, this is like it. Like, not that I would give up, but I was like, it has to happen here. Like, I have done everything. I've tried everything. Like, I'm not going to go home without that pro card. And, another little confession. Well, it's not even mine, but the day that happened, actually, my coach yelled at me the day I got off stage. Um, I won my class, and he basically didn't like something I did when I posed, and told me, he's like, if you do that, you're gonna lose in the overall. And like any other show or any other moment, I would have like that would have crushed me, or I would have been like kind of like worried or upset or whatever. And I remember being backstage and I was like, oh, hell no. Like, he's not going to bring me down. I mean, he's great. Like, he's an awesome coach. But I remember that moment and it fueled my fire. And I remember like saying to myself, I'm like, no, I am going to be the overall winner. Like, I already said this, like, and like, I didn't let it even phase me. And I remember going out there and I was like, I didn't even look at the other girls like who had won the classes, which we've kept in touch since then. They're amazing and beautiful. And like, I mean, I was just blessed to be up there with them, but like, I didn't even care. I was like, no, because I'm taking it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and I had to stay in that mindset so I didn't start double like questioning myself,
Right.
but yeah, even in that moment, I was like, okay, like that, your mindset is so strong. And like, what you tell yourself is so important. And like, I still get caught up in that sometimes. And I remember, I'm like, no, remember when you manifested shit out of earning your pro card? Like, do that again, So, I mean, I can't say enough about like how just having that mentality going into a show or doing anything really like you want to do in life, like just having that mentality can really be what sets you apart and what really makes a difference. Cause like whenever you're like second guessing yourself, like that's when you don't really bring your full potential. That's when you don't really bring like everything that you've practiced or everything that you've put effort into, because you're kind of holding back. But when you're like, no, this is it, like I'm going to do it, then you put everything into it. And you remember, I was excited. I wasn't nervous getting on stage that day. But I had also done multiple shows. So like, and
Yes.
being a posing coach, like I had already, I know my posing, whatever. So like, I remember not being nervous at all. And like, I just brought what I had been practicing and what I had known that would work. So like that day, it just kind of all came together and I was like, you know what, like, this is it. It's happening. And it did. So it was great.
What did your coach yell at you for? What was the thing he did? You can't just leave us hanging like that.
I know. And I'm like, okay, nobody tell him this. Like, I don't think he will listen, but don't tell him I told you guys this. No, so in my posing, because I actually have a pretty wide waist, I have wide hips, a wide waist, and narrow shoulders. Um, when I, when I pose, I am like, I twist a lot. So like, posing is all about creating the illusion. Like, nobody has a perfect physique. We just do our best to present it best on stage. So like for me, it's just really making my waist look tiny, and making my upper body look proportionate to my lower. So I have to always stay kind of sideways. So when I had won my class, they came out to give you the awards. And remember, like, we still, in order to get your pro card, you still have to be top
Hmm.
three in the overall. So yes, I won my class, but it wasn't for sure that I would earn my pro card that day. So, and it is true, the judges are always watching. Like, you don't want to ever expose anything to them you don't want to see, or something unflattering, or, you want to make sure that at all times you are presenting your physique the way you want them to see it, the way it's going to be presented best. So anyways, they come out to give us the awards, and they're putting medals on around our neck. And what I did is I kind of opened up my body
Oh
facing the judges so they
no.
could put the medal on me. So I exposed my waist. And I'm just like so excited. I'm like, this is the first time I've ever gotten first place. Like I wasn't even thinking it, but still
Right.
that is still, I don't want to say like a rookie move, but something I should have been mindful of, being like, no, like at this moment, like what you already know, you never expose your waist straight onto the judges. That's something personally for me that I know I should never be doing. So I did that so they could put the medal around my neck. I exposed my waist. So basically it showed like my shape wasn't as flattering as it was as when I posed. And so like the minute I stepped off stage, I'm like so giddy and excited. I'm like, yeah, I won first place. Like I'm going to go in the overall. And he's like, hey, like you exposed your waist. If you do that, you're going to lose in the overall. And I was like, oh, like, okay.
Right.
But yeah, I
It's
mean,
because he
he's very
believed in
detailed.
you, though. Like,
Oh
he wouldn't
yeah.
have been emotional about it and gotten it up in your face about it if he didn't know what you wanted, what you were there for, what you were looking for. Like, that was his job as a coach, as you know. Like, he had to say it.
Yeah, and for sure. And like, I mean, he wouldn't even brought me down to Columbia if he didn't think there was a chance that I would win, top three in the overall. So, um, I mean, yeah, he was doing what he should do. And like, I will never make that mistake again, ever. Like, even though I won that day, like, no, we all look back at like shows and like you watch your posing video and you're like, crap, I wish I would have done this differently, or I wish I would have taken my time or whatever. So like, I
Mhm.
will like, I mean, wellness posing is a little bit different, obviously, but I still know what my flaws are. I mean, we all have them. So it's like, I still have to be mindful of that. And I will never make that mistake again. Or when I'm coaching, another female that has a similar physique to mine or the same issue, like I'll be like, don't ever expose your waist, like these are all lessons that I've learned. But yeah, it really came down to like, he knew that I had the potential to win that day. And if I didn't do what I had been taught to do, that I might not. So it was like, I mean, thankfully, like, I think, even like when they were putting the medal on me, like I was kind of being covered by the person in front of me putting the medal on. So I don't even think the judges really saw. And honestly, like some judges don't think my waist is that wide. It's kind of more of a personal thing. Like I just like think it is. But when I went out there for the overall, it was like game on. Like I am not doing anything wrong. I'm taking my time. I'm gonna do things to a T because I know that's how much it matters in this moment. And, I do think, because I've had some girls from that actual show reach out to me for posing. And I'm like, you guys, if you look at our pictures, like everybody in the top five, I mean, everybody in that class was beautiful, but everybody in that top five had an incredible physique. Like, I mean, I look back and like, I can even look at girls like in our back poses and I'm like, dang, that girl's glutes are on point. Like, and what I can say about that is again why details matter. Like, yes, that girl, her physique was phenomenal, but her front pose, maybe like she should have done this a little bit differently and maybe she would have won. But like it really, really in that show and that class, it really came down to the details because I can tell you hands down, I didn't have the best physique in that class.
Mm.
But my suit came together, my hair, my makeup, my tan, all of those posing, everything came together, and that's why I won that day. So I think that's just really important for girls who are considering competing, is just knowing that like it's not a physique contest. It's not who has like the most shredded abs or like who's the leanest on stage. I mean, like I said, when I did Universe, I was too lean. So like that's why it's really important to consider all things and to really know what your division, what the expectations are, because like there's girls and girls that I coach, but they're like, oh, I just don't feel lean enough. And I'm like, you are the perfect amount of lean. We actually need your glutes to be a little bit fuller. So like they just want to be so lean and hard and it doesn't translate well on stage. So like, that's why it's really important to understand like where the division's evolving. Because if you watch bikini from a few years ago, it's a lot different than it is now. So like, you have to be mindful of like what your physique looks like the best on stage. Like some girls do look better a little bit leaner. Some girls look better a little bit fuller. Who's coaching, like I'm sorry, not coaching, who's judging, all of the details matter. So like, that's why, and I that's why I think like our team does really well because they've been in this industry for so long and have learned all those things and they apply it. Like we don't just do it at like national shows and pro shows. Like my girls doing their first show ever, they have all their details in order. I'm like, your hair needs to be fixed here, or like, no, you need to get your makeup done. Like we make sure details are on point because it really makes a difference in your placing.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah, I love that
yeah.
story. I'm gonna actually go look at those photos too. Because
Oh
I'm
no, don't. You're gonna be like, oh dang, she's right. No, I'm just
oh
kidding. No,
my god.
look at them. No, those girls, they're all beautiful, and like some of them I've been watching, and some of them are going back this year to the same show, trying to earn their pro card. And I'm like rooting for them because I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, like your physique is on point. Like it's fun to watch just to see like that I was on stage with them, and then they've progressed so much since then, and then they're gonna go for it again. Like I'm really pumped. I'm sad because this show like is where I earn my pro card and they're having pro bikini there. And if I was still doing bikini,
Oh,
I don't even care. I would have made sure I did it, but it wouldn't be smart for me, obviously, switching to wellness. So like, I'm upset that I'm not going to be there this year, but I'm so excited for the girls that are going back that were so close last year. Like, it's going to be awesome to see. So,
for
yeah.
sure. That is exciting for them and also for you to get to see it and cheer them on. And I want to make sure I talk to you about Fit Choice Foods because I am curious about how you run a meal prep company. I mean, you're obviously busy. You coach, you're a mom, and you have your own business doing this. So, what's it like to run it? Who do you serve? Why did you start it? And like, how do you even know how much food to prepare? Like, those are the questions that go through my mind.
Yeah. So we started Fit Choice Foods back in 2015. So honestly, like it was the same month. I remember we opened Fit Choice Foods and I started with Pro Physiques at the same time, just as a competitor. And so it was like a really crazy time, a lot of transitioning there. But honestly, like we have a really rocking staff. Like they are so self-sufficient. And our kitchen manager has been with us pretty much from the beginning. So like, I don't even have to be there to really observe and like make sure things are getting done right. Like he knows his stuff and like we trust them a lot. And we started out in like a shared kitchen. Like you rent a space for a certain amount of time, and then like there's other companies that come in and whatever. You have your like we had our little like gate where we would lock up our appliances or like dry food or whatever. But we ended up outgrowing it. Like we were like, there's no space to put food in the walk-in. Like it's just anyway, we had to move. So I would say, I want to say it was like 9 months in, we actually moved our kitchen to a huge warehouse. It's like 9,000 square feet.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it is the biggest space that we don't even utilize all of it. I mean, we have a huge freezer, huge walk-in. But again, like we have a staff that runs it all. And, we know how much food to make based off of our orders, of course, but we give ourselves time. So like, we deliver twice a week and we're local. So like we only serve Arizona right now. And I know we get tons of people asking when we're going to ship locally or I'm sorry, nationally, but, and I have made special exceptions for that. Sometimes we've shipped a few things, but I haven't opened it up for people just to order online. And the reason for that is because it's really important for me to keep the quality of our food where it's at. Like, I don't want to do anything processed. I don't want to do tons of like artificial stuff, frozen. So, I mean, if those companies, even if it is convenient, a lot of them use a lot of processed foods. I mean, you have to when you're shipping across the U.S. Like, you can't have like fresh food all the time. Like, it doesn't stay well. So, that's just something I'm not willing to compromise. So we have just stayed local and it's great. Like when we first started, there was, I think, one or two other companies here in Arizona, and they weren't even doing like delivery. Like you had to go to their store and pick it up or whatever. I think maybe one other one was, but we kind of started the home delivery. We're like, we deliver all over the valley in Arizona, and then we have drop off locations too. So people aren't home, they can go and like pick it up at a gym like in their area. So when we started, there was nobody doing that. And now it's just like, it's grown so much. Like it's crazy how competitive like the meal prep industry is. but we base our orders off of, or our food off of our orders. So like if people are getting food, we deliver twice a week. If people are getting food on Monday, we require them to submit their orders by Saturday night at midnight. So then we have all of Sunday to prepare. So we count all of our orders. And we have, it's not like we go to the grocery store and shop for stuff. Like we used to do that. We don't, thankfully we have a contract with like Shamrock Food. They deliver a lot of our stuff. And then, there's certain stuff that we have to go pick up from like Costco or Restaurant Depot or whatever. But we'll prepare that the day before. So if they get their food on Monday, we're preparing everything on Sunday, and then they get it delivered on Monday. And then the same thing goes for Thursday, where we have them submit their order by Tuesday at midnight, and then Wednesday we do all the cooking and they get their food on Thursday. So
wow,
yeah,
you got it
it
down
is a
to a
lot though.
science.
But we have, yes, I mean, and it was again a lot of trial and error. I mean, we've grown a lot, we've made a lot of mistakes. We're still making mistakes, we're still learning from them. But I mean, it's that's kind of the journey with like owning a business. And so I'm lucky that I don't have to share all that responsibility, but it's kind of like, especially now that it's so competitive, we have to always kind of stay on top of things and make sure like we're getting feedback from our customers or what they do or don't like, and like making sure that we're coming out with new items, or maybe they don't, this item's not being ordered frequently, so we're just going to take that off the menu and put our time elsewhere. So it's just staying on top of things. And that's probably like the biggest struggle, is making sure that we're like, on ahead of the game, because there's so many other companies like that are starting to sprout up. But we're very focused on making sure that we're abiding by the health department rules. Like we've been inspected by the health department. I don't know, they'll just like show up at the kitchen. We're like, hey guys, like, so multiple times per year, and we pass every time. And we make sure we post that like on our social media, so people know that we're doing what we're supposed to. They can trust our company. But like I worked in the bar industry and like restaurant industry for a long time, but like throughout college and all that. So I know a lot about that stuff, and that's why it's important to me, because there are plenty of companies that like, I mean, I won't call anybody out, but there are a lot of companies that like cook out of their home. And so like when they do that, they're not doing what the health department wants them to, but like cooling your food properly, packaging it properly, labeling it properly, all of those things where it could result in like a health issue for people. So like, there's all these companies that are kind of sprouting up, but they're not doing what they're supposed to. And we see that a lot of them end up kind of like fading out, because of those things. So anybody that like, well, at least in Arizona or anywhere, if you're going to order meal prep, make sure you're asking those things like where's the cooking, and like, have you been inspected by the health department? All of those things, because I mean, the worst thing for me as a business owner, especially in this business, is hearing that somebody has gotten sick from our food, which I haven't heard. So, I mean, I've worked in restaurants and it's happened. So, I mean, but that's why it's really important to me, because I don't want to ever have that reputation. So, making sure our food is always fresh, we're not using preservatives, all of those things, and we abide by the health department. Those are things that have really kept us like on top of things, and in Arizona, like on top of us growing. So yeah, it's been good, but it's a lot, between competing, coaching, and being mom and having a business. But I don't know how else to, like, I've always been a busy person, so I don't know how else to do it. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think it's good that you're paying attention to the details of things that really matter. And it gives us some good insight too, if we are looking, be really conscious of who you're buying from and, how they're preparing it. So there's been throughout this whole episode so many positive and empowering and perspective shifting insights. And I'd love for you to just leave us with your best advice for a newbie competitor. So someone who hasn't competed yet but's thinking about it, and then give us your best advice for someone who's on their road to pro.
Okay, so I would say best advice for a newbie competitor, and we kind of touched on this, was do your research. Know what is like, which coaches are excelling and that have balanced approaches. I can't that enough. Like, it really does. Yeah, I would just say, just make sure that you're looking at, like, if they're producing athletes at a national level, at a pro level, and what their methods are. and ask questions. And if someone's not willing to answer your questions, then they're probably not the coach for you. So that would be my advice for a newbie competitor. I would say at a pro level, I think a big thing is it's really hard. And I would say this is probably, I see it more in bikini, I mean, figure two, but like all the divisions is like, don't get discouraged. You can't always be on top. So like, I think obviously, and even with my own journey, is just being like relentless and just continuing. Like, yes, you know, there's certain shows that will work for you, certain shows that wouldn't. But if this is your passion, if this is what you want to do, you have to really pursue it with like knowledge. Make sure that you have a coach behind you that is going to, you know, bring you like the best, like you've ever, like, you know, on stage, but also like take the time to tell you like you're going to need some time off. I think I see a lot of pros that like, you know, they just keep going and going and going and going, and the results are the same. And so I would say like make sure that you're treating your body well and that you are really paying attention to your like feedback and just really taking that into account. Because if, you know, the judges give you feedback and maybe you're just like, yeah, but I want to do another show, they're not going to reward you. They want to see different. So I think it's really important to just, yes, be relentless and just continue that if this is your passion, but also don't be afraid to take time off. Don't be afraid to work on improving, you know, either parts of your physique or your posing or whatever your feedback is, because the stage is always going to be there. You know, like you don't, yeah, like there's a, you know, they have like the masters division. So like some girls are like, I don't want to compete in the masters, which is like really not a big deal. There's plenty of pros, by the way, that are masters age that still compete in the open and do quite well. So I don't think that has anything to do with it. But I mean, if you have to take time off to make those changes, then do it. Because if you don't, you're just like coming out the same every time and you just get more and more frustrated and discouraged. And then it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth and you're just like, you know, like don't enjoy the process as much. So it's like, this is meant to be fun. Like I don't always say, like when people say this is a hobby, for me, this is not a hobby. This is my lifestyle. This is like something that I live, breathe, whatever. It's not like I'm thinking about it all day, but like, I don't just say like, oh, like, you know, when I have time, I'm going to do that. Like, no, I make the time for it. But I think that, you know, there also has to be balance. Everyone needs an off season or time off, and just to continue doing it as long as you're having a good time, as long as you're enjoying the process. Otherwise, it's like pointless, you know? So I probably said like 5 things there, but
all really good
you
things.
get the point.
All awesome things. No, I really appreciate everything that you have shared with us today. Like I said, it's been really amazing talking to you, and I love that you shared so openly too. I really appreciate that, and I hope everybody here does too. And I know they're going to. So I want them to be able to tag you and connect with you, and even reach out to you to work with you, because you've made some really great, compelling informational pieces here that I think will, you know, encourage people to get in touch. So how can they get in touch with you or follow you, those kinds of things?
Well, you can, you know, if you want to get in contact with us for coaching, Pro Physiques, we're the pros, IFBB NPC on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Renee _IFBB Pro. And yeah, like you guys can contact, if you want to email for coaching, theprophysiques@gmail.com. You can contact them and they will either, like, if you want to work with me or anybody else on our team, you just kind of request that, or they'll place you with somebody that would work really well with you. But any of those, you can contact us. And then tag me in posts or whatever, and hopefully we can all connect.
Yes, I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes page. So to everyone listening, that's always on www.celestial.fit/podcast. And in the category section, you'll see Renee's name. Just tap on that. You'll get all that information. Of course, it means so much to me when you guys subscribe, rate, and review. So if you have never done that yet, or you just have even more awesome things to say, please do that. But of course, when you guys post on your stories, that goes even further and means a lot to me. So I just want to say thank you guys again for tuning in for another week. Man, it's been a productive year so far. I can't wait to see what else we have in store together. Renee, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yes, of
Yes, thank you
course.
so much. It was fun. Thank you for
Good.
letting me announce my big announcement today because I haven't yet. So
Yes, of course. And to everyone listening, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you are listening to this episode.